The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing. To get on board right now, send us an email. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I am Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design. I have been designing beautiful gardens and landscapes for homeowners east of Toronto for over a decade. With me across Zoom is my co-host, Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Welcome, Joanne. Good evening, everyone. I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media, email, or phone call.
That's right. And we want to thank you, as always, everybody who's tuning in right now for joining us on the live version of Down the Garden Path. And let you know if there's any new listeners, let you know that you can always check out past shows of Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app, because this show will then be later this week uploaded as a podcast. So we've got lots of content there over the years for you. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you'll be notified of new content. And of course, please like and share or leave us a comment. So we look forward to hearing from you or visiting us. I know, like you like to remind everybody, right, to visit us on our Facebook page, Down the Garden Path Podcast Facebook page, or Down the Garden Path Podcast Instagram page. Oh, can't hear you.
Oh, I moved you on Zoom, and I was saying, yes, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I accidentally muted you. So, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I like to say. So, yeah, definitely. And, I totally lost me there for a second.
Lost me there, yes. So anyway, so like us, and Matt's back and stuff. So what's happening? So we're here. It's been another hot week. Oh my goodness! And is this the last? This is the last show of July. Oh my!
It's the last show of July. Can you believe it's already it's supposed to be August next week? And they're saying, just talking about like hot and the weather. I heard today that August is supposed to be even hotter than July.
Really? Because do you find so? Listeners don't. Anybody who's been listening for a while realize that you and I freakishly share the same birthday. Many years apart, but anyway. And it's always been a sad, I've never liked having a summer birthday. I honestly haven't. Friends were always away. I've never liked it. And I've always found that it was the signal of cooling down, summer ending was my birthday. Yeah. So I even now as an adult in her 50s, I'm like, oh, summer's coming to an end. Isn't that sad? So it's hilarious that you say, no, it's going to still be hot. So yay for global warming. No,
Yeah.
I'm just
That's
kidding.
the only time,
kidding.
listeners, you'll hear her say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Ever.
I know, but it's just so funny. Yeah. So that really is a memory. Did you like having? I know we're totally off topic. Everybody start writing in your questions now, but quickly, Matt, did you like having a summer birthday?
You know what I did? I did. Yeah, I just liked being in the summer. I didn't have to worry about going to school, and I had a lot of friends on my in my neighborhood. So sometimes we wouldn't get together, or I was up at the cottage. So I loved it. I had
that's good. Funny, eh? Same birthday, two takes. Ha.
Exactly.
A whole different podcast.
But, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so what's happening? Watering at the garden center?
Oh, you know it. Yeah, it is just burning hot out there. Yeah, in the garden center, we just can't keep up with the watering. So we've got like 3, 4, 5 people doing it at the same time on top of the irrigation system that runs basically all night long, different zones for different lengths of times. But yeah, it is a hot one out there. It really is hot.
And the rain, we just got a few cloud bursts a couple times today, and it seemed to make it hotter.
It did, yeah. We've got all that humidity now just coming off all that warm cement. Yeah, so it didn't really help us much. And people were looking at me because we had that rain, and I was out there today watering. We had that rain, and we ran inside, and then it had just rained. It was still cloudy, and I was out there with the hose, still watering. And it's like, wow, that's so quick. It never waters anything. Like, you got to keep going. So never trust the rain, really.
And are people, you work this weekend, or are people looking for?
Yeah, you know what? A lot of people are starting to look for those hydrangeas, those dwarf shrubs. They're starting to think about some fall color. Butterfly bush and rose of Sharon's. Some of them, not so much the rose of Sharon's, but things like the butterfly bush or the caryopteris. They like the color for them. But they were hit like some of the hydrangeas by the May snow that we had. So they were like put back by like 2, 3, 4 weeks. So things like that, we're just starting to receive.
Yeah.
And we have our own farm. So we've had to protect them and grow them on. So there's still some stuff to come out. But yeah, it's just dwarf, some long color, low maintenance.
Even you say that though, even though like my quick fires, that's why I love them, is because of their early blooming in June, but really they just started mid-July. So the same thing, like they're 2 weeks behind. They are doing amazing, yet Bobo is just budding. So, Quickfire is still ahead of all the others, but they're all about 2 weeks behind, oddly enough. And I don't know, Limelight is getting buds on it, but it's probably still going to be now the beginning of August, where it's normally like June, July, mid-July is Limelight's blooming, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. You don't realize that you think because of the heat that plants would have caught up, but really it's not. Mother Nature doesn't always work the way we think it's going to work.
Yeah, it was so hot. And I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's been so hot at the garden center. Things have just stopped. Like they're just stopped in their tracks. They're not leafing anymore. In my garden too. Yeah. And they're just, the buds are frozen. I think maybe last week we were saying that. Yeah. So yeah, it's weird how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very much. So my garden's doing okay. I mean, I haven't watered. I'm happy to see the rain. I mean, we've been watering our vegetables and stuff in my containers, but I haven't. I kind of given up on watering the grass, and and we've had that spots of rain have been holding it to a certain point. So yeah, I haven't been watering anymore. But I'm thinking I should get the tree bag out and do some deep watering for my trees. But yeah. So aside from that, everything's good. And so we're talking another day, like our last day on Shrubs.
It's our last Shrubs. That's right.
Our last episode of Shrubs. So anybody who's missed it, all month we've talked about Shrubs. You're good at, you go ahead and read that. So I'm like butting in, or what am I? Whatever. You have it written better than I will say it. So go for it.
There you go. I'll read the little segue bit.
Okay, you segue.
Yeah, so it's the last thing. We've been talking all about deciduous and evergreen shrubs. So we've talked about, we're about to talk about some native shrubs, some nativars. We've talked about how to prune and some new and noteworthy deciduous and evergreen shrubs. And then, so tonight we're going to wrap up our month along all about shrubs. And perhaps prefacing next week's topic, with a look at nativars. So we'll talk about what is a nativar and how they come about them. But if you want to join the conversation, like Joanne was saying about the shrubs, or if you have any other questions, you can always write us here at instudio101@gmail.com. And you can reach us anytime here at instudio101@gmail.com. Gary is amazing and looks after the mail for us and always keeps us in touch off the air when you guys write in. But you can also reach us anytime. You can find me at Matthew at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca, and you can find Joanne at down the number 2 earth.ca. So,
That's
yes.
right.
And just before we jump in, I just wanted to, just talking about writing in and listeners, right at the end of the show, we got Linda. Linda, you wrote in and said, "Hi, another fantastic radio show tonight. I learned a lot. Thank you for all of the advice. Please stay healthy." And Linda was from St. Augustine, Florida. So thank you, Linda. I'm sorry we didn't get to your email, or I didn't get your email as we wrapped up last night. But thanks again for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's episode too.
That's right. Thank you very much, Linda. Excellent.
So,
So, nativar, like that's kind of a cool term.
yeah, so nativar. So we know what a native is, right? So a native is just, a plant that is native to a region or an area. And there's many benefits to our natives. But we have also cultivars. So we've cultivated certain, we've created and we cultivate certain cultivars of these native plants. So they've kind of combined the two. So it's nativar. So they just kind of put the N on cultivar, or split the word in half, and it's nativar. So it's basically a plant that its parents are native to your area, and there are cultivars, or a variety that has occurred that we cultivate and we sell for. So yeah, so so that's what nativars are. So we talk about native plants and the benefits of attracting beneficial insects, and their adaptability to our native gardens and our zones and regions and geography. But there are a lot of really cool plants that we like to talk about, or we see out in our garden centers, that are actually cultivars or nativars of our native species. So we thought we would next week we're going to talk about, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about native trees. So as we kick off our month all about trees and upright evergreens. So I thought, tonight we're going to talk about some nativars, so some shrubs that are native and that are created and that maybe we don't know that are actually native, that we could be planting to enhance our gardens, but still get what we want out of our shrubs.
Excellent, excellent. I did want to give a shout out to, I meant to talk to you about this before the show, but, people say, well, because there's a lot of people who say natives are invasive or they're messy or they get big, like there's issues with native plants. So why, but there is another reason in that there are a lot of, so I remember hearing, and everybody can Google him, his name is Doug Tallamy, Tallamy. And there's a lot of insects or birds that only feed, like, are single source birds. Like, so sometimes, like, it's not just about what looks good or that you're putting berries for the birds kind of thing, but maybe that bird only eats off of that tree. And if we're not replenishing the natural habitat of those trees, then we're going to lose that bird. So when he did the talk, oh my goodness, he talked so fast and there were so many cases, but he had a lot of cases of different birds or different insects that only depended on one type of native tree. And with urbanization and lots of other reasons, a lot of the fires in the areas that have had fires, the West Coast, Alberta, that type of thing. So that is something to think about, that it's not just about keeping that tree alive, or planting that, quote unquote, for the birds, for, let's say, food, but also sometimes for its very existence.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, and I don't think I know we don't definitely.
Yeah,
Look
I mean,
at
and I
that
know
that
where
way,
I'm just
right?
scratching the surface on that, bringing that up, but that's just something, and then hopefully Matt and I would love to do a deeper dive on his book and that type of thing. and some of the podcasts he's been on. But he spoke at Landscape Ontario this past year, and so I learned a lot, but it was, in a quick period of time. So we can do another deep dive on that, but I just wanted to give everybody another spin on why it's important to choose a native tree like a red oak, because of all the different insects and birds that depend. Like red oak is one of those that, right, a lot depend on a red oak. So when
I
you're picking trees for your yard, it isn't always just about the prettiest tree necessarily. Not that a red oak isn't pretty.
oh no, I mean it's a beautiful tree.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So
you're right. I think I read somewhere the red oaks themselves house and support over 500 different species of
I think so too.
insects and birds
Yeah.
and other wildlife that, like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So maybe we can I can get some time to do a deeper dive on that, because it was mostly trees, and so maybe we can find some time next month to kind of focus on some of those recommended things that he recommends to plant. But as far as shrubs go, I know, there's some that I just happen to love, and it's just, and I put them in a lot of designs and a lot of yards, and it just so happens that they're native. But
Hmm.
yeah, so why don't you start off telling us a little bit more about them?
Yeah.
Or
Okay. um, got it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on the end.
no, no, it's okay.
Um, yeah. So we kind of touched on, the nativars. They're produced, a native population. The variety occurs. Sometimes there's some crossbreeding and hybridization, and then we find these varieties that we decide to cultivate because of their favoring conditions. And so, like you were saying as well, some people think natives and they think, oh, it's going to be so invasive or it's going to do this, right?
Messy and big and yeah, all of that.
Exactly. And so what these nativars, these native cultivars do, they take some of that and they take some of the ones that are more clump forming, or they're not invasive, or they're a smaller habit, or that sort of thing. And I'm going to totally forget her name, but much like Doug's talk about the species that are supported by these native trees and shrubs and the food chain, I want to say her name is Amy or Emily, and I'll try to find it. I didn't write it down. I don't know why. But one of the big talks about these nativars are whether or not, again, supporting the wildlife that the native species does. So do they have the same pollen and nectar resources?
Mm,
Or do they produce a berry, but are those berries still edible by all the species that would be
mm.
eating that berry?
And maybe as nutritious, that type of thing.
And then exactly, are they as nutritious? What other pollinators are they supporting? So there are some substantial differences between the cultivars and the nativars. Some sustain and so some attract and sustain the same populations as their native parents. Some do not attract as many pollinators and sustain. Some have the same quality or quantity of pollen and nectar resources. There's a lot of different factors. So there's a lot of research, a lot like I think what Doug has been doing. And I believe her name, yeah, Amy or Emily. I think she's in Pennsylvania and she's doing a major study on all of this. So it's very interesting to read it. I'll find out for us too, so you guys can take a quick look. The main tip from most of her research that has come out is avoid the nativars whose leaf color is different than its parent.
Ooh, okay.
Right. So, and let's just pick one off the top of our head, like something like a service berry,
Okay.
right? For the most part, I don't know of any cultivars or nativars of service berries that have a different. They all have green leaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will have fall color, and that's not what the tip's saying. So the leaf color is different. If it has a natural fall color, that's fine. But if it has suddenly you have like for example a purple leaf sandchair or a
Purple
service
leaf
berry,
serviceberry, yeah.
right? The stay to the green service berry cultivars because they have been shown so far to hold more of those pollen resources and that support that the service berry group will do.
Okay.
So that was the big tip from taking it away is stick to the actual native leaf color. When you really start to play with the leaf color, it changes the genetics enough that it plays too big into other factors. So
Okay.
so that's just some tips. And then we're going to talk about a whole bunch of cool plants that hopefully you guys maybe have or have not heard of.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a few questions popping in. So just before we start, um, Ken is writing in. He says, "Hello, love your show. A question for you. What are the best smelling plants for your yard? I live in Laredo, Texas. I'm zone 9A. Thank you. We are not in zone 9 there, Ken. So a few that just kind of just a quick list. Gardenias. There's some
First
gardenias
one
there.
pop into my head too.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I was, oh yeah, gardenia. Definitely some gardenias. There's some Japanese mock oranges with creamy white flowers, beautiful orange blossom fragrance. There's some ground covers like Himalayan sweet box. There's like a golden crane hydrangea, one of the earlier blooming hydrangeas. It's not hardy for Joanne and I. It's more of like a zone 6, 7 through 10/11. There's actually some viburnums and jasmines that you could take a look at, some different elderberries. And here we're talking about some like the elderberry, for example, or the viburnum. These are also North American native shrubs that we're going to talk about that you could be planting that might support some of that local native insect and wildlife diversity to really enrich and keep your garden going.
Looking to see what zone Russian sage is.
Mm,
I'm in try because that has a fragrant foliage, really.
yep.
So I'm just looking for that. I'm not seeing it.
I find the straight Perovskia atropicofolia, if I can say that, is 4 to 9.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
and then, so they'll go up into the nines. And I think there's a couple of tens as well. But
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So that's a good choice.
So
Okay.
hopefully, Ken, that answers your question. But, write us in again. And again, if you're just joining us, in studio101@gmail.com. If we have any questions about shrubs as we wrap up our shrub month. Another one writes in, Brett, just saying hi from Arlington, Texas. Hope you're getting through the dry climate as we are. Is there any general fertilizer that we should mix with water for our houseplants? Anything to add general purpose mixture? Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, Brett. Yes, we are fighting the heat. However, I'm sure you have it worse than we do. So stay cool and hydrated there. But yeah, you could use just something. I love Schultz's 10-15-10. Pardon me, not a plug for them, but a personal favorite of mine. Just easy to use. It's just kind of
liquid.
Nice and
Yeah, I
balanced.
think a liquid one is nice.
Yeah, and I just say it's
Yeah.
really it's just a liquid concentrate with a little eyedropper, 7 drops per liter, and they also have a full line for orchids and all sorts of different house plants
specific.
as well. So
Mhm.
cactuses, African violets. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would recommend. Just something indoor that yeah. So take a
Okay.
look there,
Perfect.
and hopefully that answers your question, Brett. And then just before we go, Mike has just written in, hello folks, great show as always. My question to you tonight, are raised beds a good idea over conventional beds? They definitely have their benefits.
Mhm. Maybe he can write in and say whether that he means flower or vegetable. But I would agree in both cases. If it's a budget thing usually, so raised beds, tend to be better in the sense that you can get more. You know what I mean? You're coming up, right? So you're then usually putting in new soil.
Yeah, you can control the soil. It's better drained. Yeah,
weed
definitely.
control is a little bit better. It's been better on your back. There's a few different things. If you're talking veggies, then I think it's definitely helps to keep the critters out, right? If it's a little bit raised and above of, on I was gonna say on stilts, but like on legs stuff, you know what I mean? Then you're not having to worry about, you could still screen it depending on where you are, but or fence it. I've seen some even raised that still have a little bit of fence chicken wire around it type of thing. But yeah, so there's lots of advantages to raised beds. I know we talked with
That's exactly what I was trying
Tara.
to.
We talked with
Thank you.
Tara about her book Raised Bed Revolution and front garden raised beds in the front garden. So definitely look for that book. She definitely highlights all the benefits of raised gardens and that there's a lot of different ways to build raised gardens. She had some really cool and eclectic ones as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mike. So some nativars. So we mentioned in Ken's question some of the fragrant zone 9 plants. One of them was viburnums. So there are like 17 different species of viburnums that are native to North America. But a lot of them are grown for their early white flowering um, flowers in the spring or midsummer. Pardon me, as I'm choking on something, uh, in early spring. Their upright habit, but also they have really great berries and fall color.
Mm.
One of the ones that caught my eye, it was Viburnum cassianoides, is the species, and the cultivar is little as in Lil, Diddy. And it's a great blooming one. It's about 1 to 2 feet tall and wide, great for a foreground. Soft white flat heads of beautiful white flowers that really almost cover. It reminds me of like a spring bobo, the way that bobo just gets so dense
Mm.
when she's mature. But nice lanceolate, like almost like a medium olive green smooth color, and then blazing crazy red fall color. So just a really nice, easygoing kind of
Mm-hmm.
shrub. Um, do you use any viburnums or?
I do. It's funny because I have one that I don't know the name of that I put two of them in my garden, and it's so nice. They're early bloomers. They've stayed very dwarf, so I really like that. Yeah, so I do, and I summer snowflake is a
Yeah.
viburnum, right? So I definitely like, but no berries on summer snowflake,
No, but
right?
she gives you beautiful. Like she blooms forever though.
Yeah. Yeah, she
She's
hasn't
going.
liked the heat this year, or else I haven't watered her enough. So she's been a little bit less blooming than usual. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Um,
and I wish I knew the name. I'm gonna have to send you a picture of or do some research. I mean, even in the summer when it's finished blooming, it's got like, really nice leaves, and it's really just it's no maintenance whatsoever, and it stayed a nice size, and it's a nice background plant. And then I know as we approach fall, then the leaves will go red. So, and I know one, it's shade tolerant too, because I have one that gets more sun than the other one. And so they're different sizes, but they're both still pretty healthy, you know?
mhm.
So it's kind of, that's always a nice thing.
And are you finding that the one that's in more shade is still blooming as nicely as the sun one? Or it's still blooming, but maybe a little bit more
Yes.
sporadic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's what I thought. But
Yeah.
yeah, the that one's Viburnum plicatum, and she's native to like China, Korea, Japan. She's an
Okay.
Asian viburnum, but
Okay. So not a native.
not a native, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then there are also some different viburnums, the spice baby, and then sugar and spice viburnums as well. And where did my thing go on those? These guys are a little bit bigger. Spice baby is about 3.5 to 5 feet by the same. Spice girl is about 6 to 7. But again, beautiful white and somewhat fragrant flowers. She's a Carlesii version. Um, Hardy from zone 4 to 8. They're mounding and upright, and then just like beautiful, fantastic fall color. So
Excellent.
there's a
Excellent.
lot of cool North American nativars that are coming. I'm
Yeah.
trying to switch the term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nativars that are coming out.
And I do want to highlight the question I asked you before we started was
Oh yeah,
often when we're talking about plants, we're talking about zones, like what zone are they appropriate for? But the thing about the natives is, and the nativars is that it's more based on geography. So sometimes,
right.
so someone who's listening in Chicago, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, that type of thing. These plants also are native to you. Like it's not like, but here we are in Ontario, Canada, but just because it's a native plant to us, it's also a native, like it's kind of got the whole geography right? And
Yeah,
which is great.
exactly. You can still use something that we're using up in Ontario,
Mm.
down in North Carolina, or further west, right? So
Yes.
there's lots of different regions. So that
Yeah.
those zones cover a big geography that they could cover.
Now you have chokeberry on here, and is there a difference between chokeberry and chokecherry?
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
so
yes.
chokeberry. So tell me a little bit about chokeberry.
Yeah. There was. Um, so the chokeberries are the aronias, and the two newer ones that jump out at me um, were the new black chokeberry, the low scape hedger, and the other taller one. So they're sorry, I moved my little page here.
No problem.
So Lowscape Hedger. So she's about 36, so like 3 to 4, maybe 5 feet tall,
Okay.
by about 2 to 3 feet wide. And they come out beautiful little button clusters of white flowers. They can get some of the smaller black berries and then the beautiful red fall color as well. So
Okay.
they've got a beautiful glossy foliage. I just kind of thought it was just something neat that you could use as almost like a small hedge alternative. There's the low scape mounding one, which is a little smaller, which is almost closer to a 2x2, 3x3. And then there's the hedger one that gets a little taller, which again with that nice bright glossy green foliage and that fantastic fall color. But again, it's going to
Sunshade, like what are they?
yeah. Sorry, no, good question. They are more part sun to full sun
Okay.
as well. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But then again, you're going to have those flowers um, that is going to, again, just the flowers that are going to support all those insects and the berries that are going to come later and support those
Birds.
birds and things like that. Yeah, and the
Okay.
other animals. But they're heat tolerant. There's no real deadheading that you need to do. They're salt tolerant. And again, another big North American native that we could be planting all over the place. So just some great versatility there.
Okay. And button bush. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, so Buttbush was, and let me bring that one up because that one is kind of like the,
You can hear your
um,
typing.
oh, can you really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's not good. I have to, yeah, I kind of close that one. Um, Buttbush was a newer one to me that I didn't really know a whole lot about. Um, but it's Cephalanthus occidentalis. So it's a
Okay.
North American native, has white flowers with red fruit. There's a number of different sizes, anywhere from 2x2, 3x3 to about 4x4. Hardy's through zone 4 through 10. And these guys attract bees and butterflies and hummingbirds. And they have a nice, very like soft bottle brush like flower. Sometimes they're a little bit longer, like a Fothergill, but
Okay.
most of them tend to be a little bit more rounded with spikes on them. They are deciduous. Um, they will take the full sun to part sun. And yeah, they bloom on new wood. And then they'll bloom pretty much all summer long. So I like that one too, just because,
Ooh, that's a good feature for
yeah,
sure.
because it had a nicer, longer bloom period as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I googled it and it came up in the Bee Culture magazine. So they must be something that the bees love. And they are really unusual looking, aren't they?
they
Yeah, the
are.
flower.
So they're a fun, kind of a different eye-catching type
Yeah.
flower if you think of
Okay.
Google. The other thing I know just about to it is they tend to be fairly water tolerant as well. So if you've got something that's a little bit more boggy or watery, you've got poor drainage, that you need a little bit
Oh,
of a wet spot, she's going to give you a little bit of height and size and some nice color in that spot
cool.
as well.
Excellent. Excellent. That's always a good one.
One of the ones I know everybody likes to talk about, we were talking about it a little bit before too, hydrangeas,
That's right.
right? The Annabelle, the arborescens series, the
I
smooth
know.
leaf
People
one.
don't realize, that that's native.
That's it. And so are the oak leaf hydrangeas
I'm
as
shocked at that.
well. And
Yeah.
that's, yes, exactly. I thought they were a little further, like much further south, more like South America or like a
Hmm.
different spot. I didn't realize they
Okay.
were so close to us, but they're
Yeah.
native to like the north and the eastern part of North America as well,
Right.
the states and
Now, would
Canada.
those be definitely nativars, like the ones that you're selling at the garden center and that I'm putting in gardens? Like, would they be more, sorry, hybridized or
Yeah, they'll
modified
be
for lack of a?
yeah, there will be hybrids that have been created to create those nativars. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. So we were talking about like there's like the pink ones, the new Invincible wee whites, the Invincible spirits. So there's whites and there's pinks, and they're now just more than just our native our native Annabelle hydrangea. That's that 4 to 6 by 4 to 6 wide. There's some nice. I think we talked about mini Mauvette last week with that kind of pinky purple flower that's kind of smaller, that 2 by 2, 3 by 3 range. So there's a great deal of variation now within that arborescens family, including that incredible hydrangea. It is a cultivar of um, arborescens of that Annabelle hydrangea. So, and I believe that one was by some crossbreeding that occurred.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
I have been neglecting the email.
Oh my gosh. So we have some listener questions.
So we do have
Excellent.
some listener questions. As I just see the little thing.
And there is quite an extensive list here. So obviously we can't chat about every single plant, but we'll talk about our favorites, right? After
Yeah,
we ask, answer some questions.
that's right. So Spring writes in, happy evening. What causes shrub to lose their leaves at the bottom half? I have boxwoods. Thank you. Yeah, that could be a number of different things, Spring. Just not being able to see them. It could be an insect or a pest. It could be a disease of some sort that is causing them to be dropped. Things could be overshaded. Boxwoods are usually pretty easy growing. It's usually when they get too like they're heavily pruned or they're very V-shaped. You can get them where you can start to see those stems that are exposed in the hedges. Um, but nothing else really jumps out to me for, especially for boxwoods.
Hmm.
Um,
Unless it's snow, like if it's in an area where I think there's like
yeah,
maybe a lot of snow and ice, then the bottom like never recovers after the winter kind of thing. Like if you're shoveling the snow and piling it there, obviously you might not be in a cold climate like we are, so that might not be the case. But that's another
well, and
thing
then
to
that,
think of.
yeah, exactly. And that was going to be my next question. Like, is there been like any salt damage? Is there like been piling something on there, like snow? Have you broken it? Do you have kids or dogs or someone that's damaged the stems? But yeah, perfect. No, that was what I was going to say next. Cool. So hopefully that helps Spring. But if you have a picture or any other details maybe that we're missing or
Hmm.
something you see on it, if you want to write back, we'd be happy to
Yeah,
continue to
definitely.
see what's going on. But thank you for writing in. We've got a few more.
Okay.
But one of our nativars, one of the nativars of a native ilex, a holly, comes to mind. There's the strong box and gem box evergreen holly that are a lot of people with the boxwood blights and now the boxwood moth. People are turning to these hollies to basically like replace the boxwood because they're evergreen and they have that really small leaf. And again, just like boxwood, they're going to be able to tolerate a little bit more of a partial to full sun than they do the full shade like the boxwood. But they've got that again, that prunable, very dense growing, evergreen, nice, soft, small green leaf. So take a look for those. Yeah, I think they're Ilex glabra, and then they're the strong box and the gem box. If you're a little further, the strong box is the male and the gem box is the female. But the gem box is really, if you're up here in the GTA Zone 5, Zone 4, where Joanne and I are, the gem box we're finding still is very kind of finicky for our winters. So the burying box version really isn't quite hardy yet. And so it's mostly the male that you'll see in more of the northern regions.
Okay.
But you can get the male and the female. And the male tends to grow a little bit bigger than the female for those who can capture and grow both.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that just kind of spring just kind of had that spring to mind for me. So Peter writes in, love you guys. Thank you, Peter. For next year, what are the best drought resistant grasses to grow if we get a hot spell like this in Toronto again? Just speaking again, natives.
But does he mean lawn grass or?
Oh, great question. Yes. So, Peter, are
Yes,
you thinking
Peter,
like
you might need
lawn?
to clarify that. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Or are you thinking like ornamental grasses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because most of the ornamental grasses are pretty tolerant.
And that's what I was kind
That's
of
what
thinking.
makes me think he's thinking
Maybe lawn questions. Yeah.
lawn question. Yeah. So Peter, can you clarify that for us?
Yes. And then we'll dive right into there.
Yeah. All right.
So we'll wait on Peter for a second. Cindy has a big question.
Ooh, big one.
Hello, yes. She says, hello, my husband and I are sitting here listening to your radio show, and we thought we really do not know a lot about our favorite gardening hosts. So here are some questions.
Oh, wow, Cindy.
Cindy, this might just take us a little off, but let's
It's okay. Go for it.
We'll throw it. So there's a few questions. Joanne, do you want me to read just all the questions and then go back, or do you want me to just like one by one?
I don't know. What do you think?
Do
you see them? How many questions are there?
Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And then
we might have to email you the responses, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So how about really quickly, favorite flower?
Oh, ooh. Oh my, that's not quick. Go.
Okay, next question. Favorite tree?
Well, favorite flower, hydrangea. Favorite tree? Ooh. My tricolor beech.
Ooh, that's a good one too. Mm-hmm. I was thinking, tricolor beech. That's a great one. I like also the paper bark maple. Mm-hmm. Slower growing, but I love that copper exfoliating bark and that almost like grape-like ivy leaf. It's really cool.
Okay.
Or petticoat maple. That's one of my newer favorites too.
Ooh, not familiar.
It's green on top and then velvet purple underneath. It's super neat. Favorite shrub?
Wow, hydrangea.
Hydrangea, clearly. You know what? I am probably either a hydrangea, a potentilla, or one of the every time I say potentilla,
I know. Not a fan.
I love it. Or something like the native hollies, the deciduous hollies. I love those guys. What's your biggest pet peeve about that you see other gardeners doing? And it's for me, it's watering the leaves at night. It drives me bonkers.
I would say red mulch. And also just people not getting a proper advice, I just wish, I think people, ask an expert and get a plan. I think people think it's, would rather take the plant material that they're getting for free that might not is really, I know, is going to disappoint them, as opposed to just asking for proper advice. So it just breaks my heart to see people planting stuff that I know is not good.
That one, I agree with you there. And then just from the garden center side of things, they have this big, beautiful landscape that they love. And then they have those 1.5, 2 foot gardens. And then they just come in and
scale. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Not planting the gardens big. And this is that's a whole show, Cindy.
That's a whole show.
Of our pet peeves. We could turn Cindy's questions into a whole show.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
What's your favorite time of year to work in the garden?
Fall, because I don't have time in the spring or the summer.
True. I like the spring. I love it. Everything coming out and just that warm air. But I love the fall because of all the colors and knowing you could just see the cycle, the leaves falling and the insects going to sleep and the seeds being born. I love that too.
Okay.
Grass, stone, or architecture in your yard? Grass or stone? I'm not too sure.
I have very little grass, so I've mostly garden
architecture.
Garden and walkway. Yeah.
I would stone and garden myself too. And then favorite color of plants?
Purple and white, I guess. Yeah.
Purple and white. Yeah. That's a tough one. My favorite color is green, period. I like the different textures of greens and
foliage.
So Cindy's ends okay. back to our beers, enjoying the show. Cindy's in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, thank you, Cindy.
So
Thank you.
thank
That
you,
was
Cindy.
fun.
That was fun.
Quick fire, rapid fire.
Yeah. Winnie writes in, hello, listen to your show when I can. Thanks for the great information this year. I used quite a bit of it. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. Fantastic radio show. Thank you. You guys rock, Winnie.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank
Winnie,
you.
for writing in. Thanks for listening in when you can. We love it. We love to hear where you guys are from. Like Ray says, hello from Regina, Saskatchewan. Love the show tonight. How can you tell if your indoor plants are getting too much water? Do the leaves turn brown? Not sure. Thank you. Yeah, they'll start to wilt because overwatering and underwatering have identical or mirror image symptoms. You can also tend to see, yeah, they'll kind of turn brown, or like the edges and the margins will start to brown first and or go black as they kind of just rot out and suffocate. You can sometimes smell it too, or if you try to
Smell the soil. Yeah.
smell the soil, you can smell that something's just a little not soily or a little off there. Or also, if you pull on some of the leaves or the stems, you might find that they just come up easy, or the plant really isn't rooted in the pot and it's kind of wiggling at its crown and it's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
So, Ray, as best you can, if you like a pot but it has no drainage, put it in a plastic pot and insert it there, and just make sure it has good drainage, and just know who you've got, because all the plants, like people, like different conditions. So, yeah, and thank you
Excellent.
for your question. So where were we? Were with native.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
we got nativars, and I know we can't cover everything on our list, but I think
No.
there's a lot of things. I think people think that their native plants are, something they've never heard of, but there are a lot of common, like on our list. You've mentioned a few. We mentioned holly, and we mentioned hydrangea, like the Annabelle and the oak leaf, but things like nine bark and potentilla are not my favorite, but cedar, as far as evergreens go. Summer sweet, there's a whole selection of summer sweet that you can get at the garden center, and elderberry. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't realize. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of stuff that you're already buying, that may already be in your garden, that is actually native. Or if you're wanting to something that's like a sure thing, then it's a great way to look for, looking for them.
Yes.
But they'll be easier to find because they're, like nine bark and potentilla, you know what I mean? Whereas some of the like button bush might be harder to find. Doesn't mean you shouldn't seek it out if that's something that's
No.
going to work for you. If it's a wet area and you want flowers all summer and you've got a big space, then that's a great shrub. Yeah, but it's kind of cool to know that you could get an elderberry too, which would also get quite big and give you the flowers and the fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, take a look, like the elderberries, like our native North American one has a green leaf. And we often use things like laced up or black tower, which now has a purple leaf. So it still has the white flowers. Will berry, but you tend to be a little bit more when it's more mature than it is younger. But again, just watching that change of color kind of changes the chemistry of it. So even though you have a big, beautiful laced up elderberry, it may not have the same resources in your garden for that native wildlife and insect life. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Excellent. And cedars. I think cedars get a tough, bad rap. I think we should spend a few minutes talking about cedars.
They do.
I think they get a tough rap, right? And they're kind of a necessity because people hate looking at their fences, or they need privacy above the fences, and they want something in the winter. And often, I know myself, here in the GTA, Greater Toronto area, you can often get them, for $20 at your big box
Mm,
store, and so I try to explain to people that that's fine. That's a quick, cheap hedge, but that those aren't the natives, that those are actually grown on the West Coast. Often they're grown in soil that isn't our native soil. And that winter, so you often see the hedges, where they plant six and then every year they're replacing a different two, right?
yeah,
And that they look very similar to our native cedars, but we've got native and like eastern cedars, Thuya occidentalis. Then there's like the black cedar, the white cedar. I mean, those are all like native to north, like to our zone. Again,
Mm.
I'm not sure of the geography of that, Matt, but there, you could probably speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, your Thuya plicata, so that's your western cedars. They're all northwestern and the west coast and the northern area of the continent. So
Okay.
you're way over on the west coast,
Yeah. So
BC,
BC, Alberta,
yeah,
Seattle,
Washington,
Washington, that area for
right,
sure.
and then your eastern cedar by the name, it's the northeastern, but also the central side. So the eastern side of the Rockies, moving to the east coast and up north, through Pennsylvania, New York, Quebec, Ontario, out into the east, the
Mhm.
Maritimes.
Yeah. And you see them, like, if you think about it, they're growing in the wild on their own, looking
Mm-hmm.
green, looking happy. Nobody's watering them, nobody's pruning them. They're still lush, and they are, give privacy, like some of those, older homes with the really established, nice big, hedge between neighbors. And it's those ones that we're buying in the that are trimmed narrow in a pot, and then we're wanting to be that, and it's just not the case. And again, there's insects and birds and things that really depend on the native cedars.
Yeah, exactly. The
you know
cones and the
hmm
shelter and the
hmm
thickness for sure.
and they often do cost more. They are grown here. They aren't fast growing necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely our local growers are spending the time to cultivate them and to grow them, and they are more, unfortunately, than the ones that grow in the west coast that are shipped out here, that really struggle. Like, there are some people that'll say, oh, mine grew fine, great. But I think my experience has been that, it's they're tough. They're tough going.
Mm-hmm.
If you want one or two, you probably can win the battle. But if you're looking for a hedge of six or more, it really is challenging.
Yeah,
And I think that thinking about what the birds and the bees and the insects want, then it's much better to go with the eastern white cedar, the black cedar, that type of thing.
that's right.
Don't you agree?
Yeah, yeah. We even have people coming into the garden center, and the first question is, are these Ontario grown? Because I don't
Mm.
want them from BC because I know they're not
Oh,
going to
good.
be tough. So it's again, yeah, going to like
Education. Yeah, that's
education
great.
and grow local and
Hmm.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And
you have a better luck at it.
yeah, I think cedars also get a bad rap, just as like a total sidebar. Um, Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes. Yes. Do you get that question too?
I
All the
love the cedar, but
time.
it attracts
Attracts
mosquitoes.
mosquitoes.
No.
No.
They're thick, they're dense. The native eastern cedar can sit in water. That's why it's that swamp cedar. But
Hmm.
it's dark and it's sheltered and it's thick, and that's where mosquitoes like. It's damp, it's dark, it's thick. There's moisture nearby. They're smart. They know to be there. So if you have moisture and a dark, shady spot, mosquitoes are going to find their way into your shrubs, no matter what shrub it is.
That's right. But in your typical suburban yard,
Yeah,
that's not the case. You need to water your cedars and you need to take care of them. They're
yeah.
not sitting in water. They're not attracting the mosquitoes. So it's one of those things. I say this thing too, like the mosquitoes are attracted to water, and cedars like water, but not everybody these days in the suburbs has, a water issue, a drainage issue, where the mosquitoes are going crazy in their cedars. So yes.
Um, we're reaching the last like 8 minutes.
Wow. Do we have a couple more questions?
We do.
Okay.
Ari's written in. Hi, what can you do to prevent rabbits from eating the bark on my shrubs?
Ooh.
Thank you. So you can, protect them with like tree wraps. You can build like a little structure around them. They're just note that Ari, not sure where you are. If you get the snow, they're very light. They'll walk over the structure on the snow if it fills it up. But there's also things that you can find at your local garden center. Orthobegon Max comes to mind, or Scoot, that you can apply to the bark of your shrubs. That as they go to bite into it or nibble on it, they get that taste and they're turned off and they'll walk away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
I also think of there's some perennials you can maybe plant around your shrubs that bunnies don't like anything that is fragrant or
mm,
furry. So if anything that has like Russian sage, catmint, lamb's ear, like I'm not a fan of lamb's ear, but it works, right? It could be like around the base of your plants. So if it's furry, has a texture to it, is fragrant, they will stay away. So that's another thing where you can kind of add some new plants to your garden, and it be a bit of a discouragement, because I think some of those you might need to stage it, right? Try doing some of the fragrant and furry plants. Try doing the tree wrap around the base, especially the fall and winter, and then try something like a product like Scoot.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
As I play around with that, our last question is Shane writes in, "Hi, what shrubs look good all year long? I
Mm-hmm.
have all of the weather for, sorry, I have all of the weather of the four seasons, including rain, snow, sleet, hail, wind, and drought. Just
Mm-hmm.
trying to spruce up my year a bit all year long."
Okay. One we skipped over here, comes to mind is St. John's wort. Don't you think?
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like that's an interesting option in the sense that it has flowers, it's green, it's a nice compact size, but it's got a really interesting fall berry and leaf, doesn't it?
yeah. And the leaves tend to change color as they go in the season. You can get all sorts of different colored berries on them. There are some bigger ones. There's some nice compact ones. So some great ones for different sizes and places in your yard as well, for sure. One of the in the garden center right now, the St. John's wort that we have is looking fabulous. It's one of the better
Mm.
colored shrubs right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. And then snowberry, which I think is blooming, even though so maybe the one, because I went for a walk on a trail this past week, and there were quite a bit of white berries on a shrub. So I don't know, is that snowberry or
Yeah,
is
it
that
could
the snow? Because
be.
there's one that blooms, I know, and that has a berry more in the fall.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's some the snowberries out, and then some of the dogwoods are also starting to show some of
Yes.
their berries.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So that's another option too, is the dogwood, not necessarily flowering, but really interesting variegated foliage for most of the year. And then when there's no foliage on it, the stems are red and you can get them green and yellow. So that can be something that you put amongst the other shrubs, especially in a shady area. Or part sun area, right? You can do the gray mixing the red and the green and the yellow twig in amongst other things. I think is a great way to extend your season, right? Because you have that color in the
Exactly.
fall when everything else is losing its leaves. You can see the interesting stems, and when they're in the middle of winter, when everything's white and covered in snow, you've got these red stems and yellow stems and green. Like it's like a really nice, like chartreuse green almost, right?
Yeah,
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 so that's
exactly.
that's a neat way. So it's hard for one thing to do all four seasons, but I think if you could get three seasons out of it, then you've done a good job, right? Because then it's overlapping.
Yeah, exactly. You're staged just like everything else,
Yeah.
really in nature. Everyone has their time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's lots to talk about and lots to think about on regarding native shrubs or nativars. We definitely, like Matt said earlier, open to email us questions, post a question or a picture in our Facebook page, Down the Garden Path podcast Facebook page. We'd love to help you when we can. And yeah, so that's a great resource. But consider, ask at your local garden centers when you're looking, especially if you have an established garden and you're just looking for one or two things, then maybe consider what native shrub would be good in your neighborhood, in
mm,
your area. Or even if you have, let's say you have a lot of property and you want to take up space, you can't be buying all these little shrubs. You need something that is actually going to cover some geography. So that's another thing to think about, some of the larger nanny berries and larger viburnums, right? Larger
yeah,
service berries, things that will take up space but still provide that seasonal interest as well as food and shelter and nutrition to a lot of your local native birds and bees and insects.
very well said.
Yeah, good. Well, shout out, woohoo, natives.
Woo! Yes. Yeah, and that brings us to the end of the show. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, as always, for joining us on Monday evening. We love getting together and talking gardening with all of you guys. Um, this brings the end of the month of shrubs. And so, if you know, we're talking about a theme every new month. And next week, we are going to kick off our trees and upright evergreens
Excellent.
month. So, we've got lots to talk about. Next week, we're going to talk about native trees. So, we're talking about native shrubs and nativars. We're going to continue the conversation kind of with
There'll be a little crossover,
little
serviceberry
crossover.
shrubs and serviceberry trees.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be great. So yeah, and again, if you're just tuning in and you didn't catch the beginning of the show will be released as a podcast as well. So we love that you're tuning in to the live episode. But if you didn't catch it all, then please search for Down the Garden Path podcast on your favorite podcast app and subscribe, and you'll be notified when we get a new episode loaded.
That's right. That's right. So thank you, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you, Linda, Ken, Brent, Mike, Spring, Peter, Cindy, Ray, Ari, and Shane for all of your questions. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you, Gary, for helping us produce this wonderful show. Thanks, Joanne. Love doing this with you.
Yeah, me too.
And tune in next week, everyone.
Native trees.
Native trees. And thanks for joining us here down the garden path on Reality Radio 101.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.